Well, shalom, and thanks so much for joining us for this special hybrid podcast slash webcast brought to you by Jewish Voice Ministries International. I'm your co-host, Ezra Benjamin, Vice President of Global Ministry Affairs here at Jewish Voice.
And I'm Berna, Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
And Carly and I are teaming up together to bring you a really important and timely update. You know, everybody in the world is talking about coronavirus, COVID-19, what that has to do for them and their own situation. But we want to extend beyond the borders of our countries of residence and citizenship today to bring you an important update that you may not be hearing almost anything about. And it's how coronavirus is affecting life and ministry opportunities in the nation of Israel. We know you stand with Israel. We know you pray for Israel, and we want to give you some important updates directly from Israelis and those doing ministry there, so you know how to stand with Israel and to pray and to get involved. Now more than ever, Israel needs your prayers, needs your help, needs your support. And we want to provide you with some real practical information to enable you to do that, and also to be up to date on things you're not hearing on the news. 3 interviews today that are coming in just a moment. First of all, Tamar, our program manager here at Jewish Voice for our work in Israel. Tamar interfaces with over 60 ministries that Jewish Voice Ministries supports in Israel, and she's going to join us from our Phoenix headquarters here and tell us what the situation is on the ground in Israel, big picture. Stuart and Chantel Winograd lead a ministry called Reach Initiative, and they have been in Israel for a period of time. They just came back to the States, but they're going to update us on a highly vulnerable but very important to the heart of God segment of the Israeli community, the Holocaust survivors living in Israel. And then finally, Yoel Shani, who's an entrepreneur and a ministry leader living outside Jerusalem in the land, native-born Israeli, is going to tell us what the situation is for him, for his family, and for ministries and ministry leaders as they prepare for Passover in the middle of a national lockdown. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Tamar, for joining us. You've been the Israel Program Manager at Jewish Voice for 3 years or so. I think you lived in Tel Aviv and have a good pulse on Israel and the ministry world there. Can you tell us about what the specific regulations are going on in Israel and how strictly they're being enforced right now?
So the regulations with COVID-19 started mid-March and have become stricter and stricter. I'm just going to bring up this website that shows you exactly what's allowed and what's not allowed going around. So let's say for a brit, which is a ceremony for a child, that's allowed to go, but only until 10 people. And funerals only until 20 people. And they all have to be in open spaces with 6 feet in between. You can go to get medical attention. You can go to get groceries. You can walk around your house only 110 yards. So it's like very close to your house. You can't meet with anybody. Yeah. And last night, Bibi even made it more restrict, and now you can meet only 2 people that are not from the same immediate family. So beyond 2 people, it's just not allowed, and they are giving out fines. So yeah, you're actually really locked in home, except for those specific cases.
Wow.
So that's to say, I mean, how are people self-regulating in the sense that do they have to carry a tape measure and measure 100 meters? And what happens if you see somebody turn a street corner? Do the police just stop them? How much of a police state is it in Israel right now with all these regulations, or is it sort of self-enforced?
No, Bibi said to the police to enforce everybody to keep the rules, and they have apps on your phone specifically for this. Like you put in your address and it shows you exactly the meter, 100 meters, which is 110 yards around your address and until where you can walk. And even walk your dog, you have to stay in those boundaries. Yeah.
Wow, it's pretty strict.
Wow. So has this kind of lockdown ever happened in Israeli history that you're aware of?
No, not as I'm aware of, and it hasn't happened like in Israel. I checked it. Not this kind of lockdown ever. Not even when we had like war with Saddam Hussein in the 90s. I remember we had like these gas masks, but we're not in lockdown. We're just and that's just like for a few days. Here's a few weeks, and we're talking about months almost.
Right. What you just mentioned, even what we're doing now in Israel sounds like Israel is like at war.
Yeah, Bibi started out before he gave the like how to behave in this time. So he introduced it as we are at war with an invisible enemy, the virus. So he introduced like the season that we are. It is war. Just the enemy is invisible, and we have to fight it. So this is the way we're gonna fight this war.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Israel has been trying to protect every single life, right? I mean, it sounds like until a few days ago, there were 0 deaths despite hundreds of cases of coronavirus in Israel. Why? What's the thinking nationally, or maybe in the Jewish tradition, Tamar, behind going to all these lengths to save even one person from dying? How does that, is that kind of like something the society holds as a value, or why go to all the trouble? Other countries are kind of just saying, people are going to die and it's inevitable, but Israel's really counting every death almost as like as a failure, something to be grieved.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do. We grow up on that, understanding that every life is important, every life is a whole world. And Bibi is also scripting verses, from the Bible at this moment, reminding us that we are a world of creation, from the Creator. So every creation is really important. So he said, who doesn't keep these restrictions that I'm giving you, even though it's very hard, 2 people not from the immediate family. So he gave from Leviticus 19:16, I wrote it this year. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. And then he also quoted, love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So both of them he gave as if you're going to walk around now or meet with other people. You're doing exactly the opposite of what God is asking us to do here. So he's really taking it seriously, thinking about others, and because we love others.
Okay.
Love your neighbor as yourself. So he's bringing it back to just the love and God.
Interesting. And Israel is
creation.
right. Israel's not a theocracy, so it seems pretty unusual that the prime minister would be quoting scripture, but I guess maybe desperate times call for desperate measures. Very interesting. He wouldn't necessarily consider himself a religious man, but here Netanyahu's appealing to people's belief in the Torah in terms of how they're going to behave around Israel. Very interesting times.
Mhm. So,
quoted it, but without. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say the commandment of loving your neighbor as yourself. I understand he's saying, protect yourself, don't be around other people. But what about all the ministry that is done in Israel? Is that all just stopped now, or what's happening with that?
Yeah, everybody's affected in each kind of way. The ministries that are acting as businesses, like we have like a kindergarten that we support as a ministry. We have a sports center that we support. So those are really getting affected. Also by their ministry, they don't have the people coming in and to minister to them. Also, the finances are not coming in. But God sees everything. It's not a surprise for Him. So He has a plan for them. They need to trust Him.
Mm-hmm. So none of the ministries are able to go out and do any of the work that they normally do.
No, only essential. How do you say that word?
Essential,
like,
yeah.
What
Yeah.
Yes. Jobs. There are some ministries that still go out and give food, to the poor and to the homeless.
Mm.
But they have to be careful, and maybe the police, have a heart for them because they're doing something like that. But
is the government
yeah,
doing anything to help those people that are normally helped by ministries?
yes. So it's breaks down to different cities, and every city is helping the way it notices people. So let's say in Tel Aviv, they would take all the restaurants are closed. They closed, so they took all of the food from the restaurants. They cooked meals. They were serving the homeless and the poor with the food from the restaurant, so it just won't be wasted and it'll be used like the best way they can use all of that produce.
Got it. Okay. And has he stated when this will end, or is it just kind of ongoing for now?
Yeah, he's never given a date. He's never given 2 weeks. He just would give restrictions. He said this is until the next update. So please stay tuned. So we don't know. The kids have been out weeks now from their school. So the parents are with their kids. No daycare. Yeah, and it's going to go on at least for after Passover.
Wow.
Which is in a week and a half. Yeah.
The first Passover in decades, maybe, that most Israelis have just had to be home with their families rather than out at a big event or even out of the country.
I know that's a huge thing. Really, everybody used like the week of Passover to travel and to take family trips or friend trips, or people that wouldn't want to cook, they would go to big giant hotels and have their dinners. Here, it's the first year where everybody's going to be with their immediate family, sitting around a table and celebrating Passover. It's like amazing just to think about it. Yeah, I hope people will take it in a positive way.
Yeah,
and we'll
amen.
see positive outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully good comes out of that as well.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing kind of what's going on the ground in Israel and being our pulse for what's happening there.
You're welcome. I can tell you there's also just one thing to add, that with the ministries, they're using this time just to connect and build relationships, even if it's on phone. They're not forgetting the people that they're serving. Even if they don't see them face to face, the ministries are working, doing phone calls, doing whatever they can to provide to the people that they serve and help. So that's just good to know. And people have their spirits up, and that they're connecting in different ways, trying to go through this season together as one, united together.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, next up in our set of fantastic guests for this podcast episode is Rabbi Stuart and Chantel Winograd, co-founders of the Reach Initiative. It's a Messianic Jewish ministry serving in Israel, in Eastern Europe, in India, and also in North America. And the Winograds have actually been involved in a very special segment of ministry in the land of Israel for the last 5.5 years, serving Holocaust survivors. In the later years, the sunset years of their lives, they've had tough experiences, but they are open to hearing the good news of Yeshua, and their hearts are open through receiving practical services in his name. So Winograds, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's always good to be here with you, Ezra.
Thank you. Well, today we want to jump right in and focus on that very specific segment of the Israeli population, very vulnerable, we can say at risk even as far as coronavirus goes, the Holocaust survivors. First of all, let me back up before we talk about them. You've just recently left Israel and you're in Atlanta, Georgia right now. Tell us about the experience of trying to get out of Israel in the midst of a national shutdown.
Oh, man, it was eerie when we arrived at Ben Gurion Airport, because usually there are thousands and thousands of people, waiting online, going through security, checking in. But when we arrived there were about 24 people in the whole place waiting to check in. And it was eerie, and it was just another evidence of how quickly and radically life has changed as a result of this coronavirus epidemic.
Right. And you guys were on some of the last maybe regularly scheduled flights out. It sounds like just what I heard is that 1 in 12 flights is now leaving Israel and the other 11 are canceled. So you got out just in time, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. We just felt, it was hard to leave actually, but we felt that the Lord wanted us back here to be able to coordinate the
Right,
ministry that we have on 3 different continents. It was going to be easier for us here,
right.
more.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, as Ezra mentioned, you usually do ministry in Israel. So for our listeners who don't know, can you tell them how many Holocaust survivors are in Israel and what the ministry that you do normally looks like when we're not in a lockdown experience?
Yeah. Well, there are about 150,000 Holocaust survivors living in the land of Israel. And by the way, we also serve them in Belarus, which is located between Russia and Poland. And
Mhm.
of these 150,000, many of them are lonely, especially those that don't have family members. And quite a few of them are living in poverty. A good percentage of them are living quite poor.
Mhm.
Uh, Visit them in hostels where they have one small room, and in that small room is their bed, their kitchen, their living room, and it's not easy for many of them.
Hmm.
Sure.
And what do you
And
guys
you
do? You
go
bring
ahead.
them supplies, or what is it that you do to minister to them specifically?
Yeah, we have a real array of things that we do. One of the things that they really love is that we organize feasts for them. We get together, we have music, we have, sometimes children playing some
Mhm.
things, or reciting
These are on the
poems.
biblical
And those
holidays
are for
like
the
Passover, Rosh Hashanah, etc.
right. And then they get some gifts and they eat and we dance with them. This is really a great opportunity to bring joy into their life and to let them know that we care and we love them. And we also started this year doing excursions every month,
Mhm.
and we bring them to some biblical places, and it's giving us a great opportunity to bring them where Yeshua walked.
Mhm.
And they realize Yeshua was an Israeli Jew,
Right.
and that raises all kinds of questions in them, and it gives us a great opportunity to answer the questions right on the spot and to invite them to our home groups,
Mhm.
because we have 7 home groups that we run every week in Israel for those that are interested in digging into the word more and learning more about the God of the Bible and the Messiah Yeshua.
Right.
You know, most Jewish people, as you know, Ezra and Carly,
Yeah.
most Jewish people have this picture of Yeshua that he's like the Gentile God or the Christian God. And
Right.
same with many of our Holocaust survivors. And so when we were at these biblical sites and we were pointing out that, he was a Jewish rabbi, but
Mhm.
more a Jewish prophet, the Son of God, and the Messiah, they were amazed, at how Jewish he really was. And it opened hearts even wider to
Yeah.
his love, his message. And it was really cool. Another thing that we do is home visits.
Mhm.
And home visits are kind of the heart and soul of the ministry of Reach Initiative
Okay.
International, because we like to say we're into, and we train all of our international staff in this way, and in our own little way, humble way, we try to, model this to
Sure.
love people to the kingdom of God one at a time.
Mhm.
So really the heart and soul of our ministry is to develop deep personal relationships with the Holocaust survivors in
Mhm.
Israel. And our teams make about 80 or more home visits every single month, month after month. Now,
That's
of
great.
course, lockdown, things have changed a little bit.
Right, exactly. And that was my next question is, obviously with a national lockdown and nobody can go more than 100 meters from their home, you're obviously not doing home groups. You're not hosting feasts and festivals. You're not taking anybody on biblical site tours. So what is the situation for the Holocaust survivors now, and how do you minister to them? I mean, it's a real game changer, the lockdown.
Yeah, it is a real game changer, and we didn't give up. We kept looking for new ways to connect. So
Right.
we're making more than 80 phone calls now every
Hmm.
single month to the Holocaust survivors that we serve. And we serve hundreds of them throughout Israel
Hmm.
in a number of different cities. So our teams are on the phone every single day making phone calls. And some of the survivors are talking with us 30, 40 minutes on the telephone.
I'm
And
sure.
then there's some that, that weren't so interested in spiritual questions before,
Hmm.
now they're much more interested, and
Hmm.
they really want to understand the spiritual and eternal dynamic of life. And
Hmm.
whenever I'm with them, and it reminds me of a story. It's not exactly an answer to your question, but this is
Sure.
one thing that we're doing. I remember about a year and a half ago or so, 2 years ago, when I was leading a Shavuot,
Hmm.
uh, Pentecost biblical feast celebration in a city in central Israel,
Yeah.
specifically for Holocaust survivors. And the
Hmm.
leader of the group, who's a good friend of mine, we're friends with the entire leadership team that represents 3,000 Russian-speaking Holocaust survivors from the former Soviet Union. And
Hmm.
this leader said to me, he said, "Remember what I told you, Stuart. We need spirituality now. My
Yeah.
people need spirituality, and we want it from you and your team." And
Wow.
so they see the love that we're pouring out upon them, Ezra.
Hmm.
They
Sure.
are opening, our team is just trained to love people into the kingdom,
Yeah.
unconditional love, serve, 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 pray a lot
Hmm.
in the background. And their hearts are just opening. And we've seen just in the last year more than 15 survivors in
Hmm.
Israel pray to receive Yeshua.
That's
And what else is cool about that? Many of them are growing and reading the Bible. Not all of them, but most of them are growing and reading the
awesome.
Bible and
Hmm.
moving forward in their relationship with the Lord. But back to your question, what else are we doing in addition to these phone calls during the
Yeah.
lockdown? Uh, this Holocaust survivor, Maya, she's a beautiful woman. Most of them are in their 80s and 90s. She's in her
Hmm.
80s. She hosted one of our home groups, and
Uh-huh.
she said how much she misses it. And so she said to our team leader in Jerusalem, "Do you think we can do our home group online?" And can you
Wow.
imagine 80 and 90-year-olds doing these home groups where they're opening the Bible and studying together online? So we're
Hmm.
starting to do this online, and it's amazing. I mean, it blows my mind to even think about it. And then,
Right.
that we petitioned the Israeli government to have permission to go out. And on this Passover, we're going to be delivering, our teams are going to be hand delivering Passover gifts to the survivors. We're going to be having our masks, and we're not
Sure.
going to go to their homes. We're going to drop it at the door. We're going to hug them with our eyes.
Yeah.
And and so we're going to be dropping these gifts at the homes of many survivors that we serve in the land of Israel. So we're grateful that we have that. And also, this permission gives us the opportunity. We got a call from Fira about a week ago,
Hmm.
Holocaust survivor, and she said, "I can't get to the post office to pay my bills, and I
Sure.
can't get out to get my medicine. Can you help me?" And
Yeah.
so our team did that as well.
Because some
That's
of
great.
them relatives, they don't have children that can help them. They're really
Sure.
alone. They have friends, but their friends are in the same situation as they are. They're
Sure.
locked in their apartments. So they need us to help them. And it's a great thing that the government gave us this permission because now
Yeah.
we can freely do this for them.
Right.
And as
So you as a Messianic ministry are really filling in the gap in a way that the government can't meet for these people who are now locked in their houses, can't get
yeah,
basic needs.
yeah,
Yeah.
we really are. And I don't know who else really is making home
Right.
visits to Holocaust survivors, 80 or
Hmm.
more. after month. It's just something because that relationship developed. Sometimes people go, oh,
Sure.
81 is cool, but you know what? Not everybody, if you knock on their doors, say, oh, sure, come on in. It's because of the relationships that have developed that they welcome us in their homes, that their doors are wide open.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm still
Great.
getting over the 80-something-year-old on a web like a go-to meeting with their friends and with a ministry. My parents are in their 60s and they can't figure it out, but the 80-year-olds in Israel are doing it. So
Well,
that's
some of them said, you're going to have to help us with the technology.
I'm sure it's
Yeah.
a reasonable request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very
do you feel like the Holocaust survivors are still feeling isolation and loneliness, or that's totally being bridged by what you're able to do?
Well, I'm sure that some of them still do. And not only to feel isolated and lonely, but they're fearful.
Mhm.
It's a really scary time for people like them.
They're the
And
most
so,
vulnerable, right? 80s,
yeah.
90s, many of them have health issues.
But what we've noticed, though, with many of them, they are survivors. They're
Uh-huh.
people, they have hope, and they're fighters, and they're survivors. And so I pray that God would meet them all, that they would
Yeah,
be protected, and that they will fight through this, and they'll be survivors of this too. And we'll
sure.
meet again,
Yeah,
when we can get to Israel and give them hugs, and be able to love on them again.
Yeah.
right.
Carly, I can't say that we're completely alleviating their feelings of isolation and loneliness, but we're trying to do our part to
Mhm.
do
Yeah.
everything we can to relieve those feelings of isolation and loneliness through
Mhm.
the phone calls and the Passover gifts that we're going to deliver, and the help that we're providing.
Right.
Mhm.
So good.
Great.
Many of our listeners may be saying, I certainly can't go to Israel. I can't really go anywhere now, but I can't go over to Israel and I can't help. But how can I pray? What's the biggest prayer need for yourselves and others ministering in Israel to these Holocaust survivors in this season with coronavirus?
Ezra, I think it's the same prayer that I've been praying for you and all of my friends. We've been
Mhm.
friends a long time, and
Sure.
Jonathan and me and Chantal have been friends for almost 30 years, and
Mhm.
partnered together. We're grateful for Jewish Voice and the partnership that we have in many areas of ministry.
Mhm.
So this is the prayer I've been praying really for everyone, and I think this
Mhm.
is a prayer that your listeners can pray for the Holocaust survivors and
Mhm.
for all of our team serving.
Yeah.
Um, and it's this. It comes from 3rd John, the third letter of John, verse
Mhm.
2. It says, "Loved ones, I pray that all will go well with you, and that you will be in health, just
Mhm.
as your soul is going well." And
Yeah.
so I would encourage people to make that simple prayer for the survivors. It covers a lot of ground, and you can
Mhm.
build off that. Yeah.
So as you mentioned at the beginning, you're not in Israel right now. When do you think you'll go back, and what do you think you'll find when you do go back?
Well, we had planned to go back on June 7th,
Mm.
but who knows? This whole novel, brand new virus. I mean, I have a son-in-law who's a doctor, and he's treating coronavirus patients in the
Wow.
hospital. Yeah, and so he tells me that there's so little we know about it. We're just learning about it, and it's hard to say. I mean, we hope that it's going to peak out in Israel and the
Mhm.
United States and other places in the next 2 weeks and start to die down, and we're going to get better treatments and so on. But it's all in the Lord's hands. And one thing I also want to say, when we
Mhm.
say it's in the Lord's hands, this didn't surprise the Lord. He told us
Sure.
that these kind of things would come on the earth: famines, wars, earthquakes, epidemics, like we're experiencing. And so this is not surprising him. And I'm so grateful that we can trust in him, that he never leaves us or forsakes us, and that we can boldly say that he
Mhm.
is our helper in time of need. And so
Amen.
we're trusting him to guide our steps. We're trusting him to bless all of you folks and all of your listeners, to bless our Holocaust survivor friends, and many of them are like family to us, and to
Sure.
bless our teams around the world. We're just we're going with it step by step.
Sure. Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for being a partner of this program and this ministry. Rabbi Stewart and Chantel, have a great Passover. Stay healthy, stay safe. Can't wait to hear more from you in a few months.
Always great to be with you. Hag
Thank you.
Pesach Sameach.
You
Happy
too.
Passover. Many blessings to you all.
Amen. You too. Thank you.
Shalom.
Well, our final guest for this episode is Yoel Shani, an entrepreneur involved in business development in many arenas in Israel. And we're speaking with him directly from Israel tonight. Yoel, welcome. This is your, fourth week locked in your house in Israel as restrictions continue?
Yeah, restrictions continue. First of all, this is great to be here. We are entering the fourth week, and
Okay.
this is a very interesting time.
Hmm. Indeed. So how long do you see this lasting? Has Prime Minister Netanyahu said anything about how long you should expect this to go before things normalize?
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. So there's not this total lockdown, shutdown. You can't drive or anything. There's many things that you're allowed to do, like go grocery shopping. You can actually go to any job you can go to. There's only restrictions on which businesses can be open. For example, shops can't have people entering them, so they have to serve people in the parking lot. Restaurants can only serve food and takeaway. So there's different restrictions, but we're not in full shutdown. I guess
Okay.
one of the hardest things is that there isn't a clear definition of what's going on. In other
Hmm.
words, people are saying, well, can we work? Can we not work? Can we do this? Can we not do this? And it's not
Hmm.
clear. Regarding your
Okay.
question about time, what we're seeing is that everyone's trying to fight this curve, right? We're trying
Hmm.
to make sure we don't get into these huge multiples of people getting infected with the coronavirus. And the way that they're doing that is they're restricting movement, and now they're talking about starting. I guess the balance is always between the economics and the health. Because if you shut everything down, you're going to have 100% victory in health, or very
Uh-huh.
high, but the economical implications will be huge. So what they're talking about now is that we're right before Passover. On Wednesday night, we'll be celebrating the Passover Seder,
Right.
and then we'll be finishing with that mid-April,
Hmm.
uh, around, I think it's about the 16th or 17th of April, and they're talking about
Sure.
starting to bring businesses back then,
Okay.
and then assessing a couple weeks later what they're going to be doing with schools,
Right.
specifically for young kids.
Okay. Have schools officially been closed until August or until the fall, or that's not yet official?
Well, they're actually they closed them indefinitely, but they're not making any clear claims.
Yeah.
We have three little girls, and they've been home with us since the 15th of March.
Right.
Uh, and that's a very exciting time, I guess, for everyone. Very exciting time to
Sure.
have kids at home.
Hmm.
Big benefit for those who are used to homeschooling. We're not, so those who homeschool must be having an easier time than some
Right.
of the people that need to adjust.
I'm
Mhm.
sure. Sure.
Do you feel like people are still staying connected, or do they feel isolated because they're stuck in their homes?
It's isolated. I think that it's hard. People are desperate for relationship. We're allowed to leave our house up to 100 meters just for a walk, which is about 100 yards, right?
Right.
And we went out of the house today and we saw neighbors, and their first thing that they were saying as they were pulling into their parking was humans, humans. And I think people are missing human interaction. What
Sure.
I would say is that even though people are missing human interaction, those who have families, we may be throwing jokes around, the kids at home, all this kind of stuff, and it's tough. But those that
Uh-huh.
don't have kids at home are having a really hard time. Those single people are having a really hard time, and the grandparents that are used to seeing the grandchildren. Israel's
Hmm.
a very close, warm society. We see
Yeah.
everyone, we
Right.
hug, we touch,
Right.
and when you have grandparents stuck at home, they're
Yeah.
also in the danger age group and the at-risk
Sure.
age group, that's really hard for them. The grandparents are really having a hard time not being able to just talk to the kids.
Hmm.
And also the technological gap, the older you get, is also greater. So you may
Yeah.
not hear properly and you don't know how to fix it, or you may not see properly on your phone trying to WhatsApp or Zoom with the kids or grandchildren. It's tough.
Hmm.
Sure.
You
Sure.
mentioned that, Passover's coming up in a couple of days. How do you think people will celebrate that differently? Since, like you said, many people, grandparents, single people will be alone.
Well, they're making very clear restrictions right now, and they're saying that they're going to be using mild force to enforce them, because we're seeing different sects of society that are not respecting the rules like they should.
Hmm.
The Passover Seder is a big one. This is sort of the top of the top of the family time together.
Yeah.
And to tell a family they can't be together in Passover, I mean, that's a really tough one. Even the
Mm.
Bible says to us, it says we should teach this to our children and them to their children. And it's a
Right.
real commandment. And tearing
Right.
apart families is not an easy thing. They keep saying very clearly, please don't do this. Please don't do this. It's not this. Well, we'll let you know closer to the date. They're making a lot of noise about the subject because this is where the groups that are in danger, the older ones, can be really, really exposed fast. And that's a big concern. So I've been hearing a lot of people talking about having a screen at the table,
Sure.
and having kind of Zoom or video conferencing, Skyping in with the rest of the
Right.
family.
Right.
We've seen great stuff over the weekends. Shabbat dinner every week. People are used to doing that as families. Israel's a very small country, so we're really close together. So
Sure.
we see family together. We host each other all the time, and not being together is a tough one.
Yeah.
And we've been on Shabbat that families are having Zoom meetings with everyone together just to be together. So
Hmm.
Right.
Passover is going to be really tough. Um, the word in Hebrew for seder,
Yeah.
which means the dinner, the Passover dinner. There's another
Sure.
word in Hebrew that's called segel, which
Hmm.
means closure. And people are saying, instead of saying Leil HaSeder, they're saying Leil HaSeger, the night of the, instead of saying the night of the Passover Seder, they're saying the night of the Passover closure.
The
And it's really,
restriction.
Yeah.
what's that?
Yeah. The restriction. The Passover restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's going to be tough on families.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. That's rough. Now, what's the sense? Passover is a time like Rosh Hashanah, like Yom Kippur, when maybe Israelis are thinking a little bit more about this idea that God may actually exist. I'm talking about the secular, not the religious community, but kind of more in touch with taking stock of your life. Do I have anybody to make amends with? That's kind of an annual or semi-annual thing. What's the sentiment these days, Yoel, in Israel about the idea that God may exist and actually has something to do with coronavirus? Is that topic outside the religious community coming up at all? Are people saying, is this God's judgment, or is God trying to show us something, or is that kind of not yet on the table?
Look, it's very hard to tell because I don't represent the whole people of Israel. I don't, have a
Right.
direct line with 9 million people.
Sure.
I'm sure that people have time now to think, and
Uh-huh.
they're stuck at home. Your brain's working. You can only take in so much Netflix and so many, social media outlets, and at some point you
Right.
start thinking. I will say, amongst the community of believers, that I am hearing people taking this as a joyful time, a break, a time to think through things. Um, we're still on the road, both my wife and I, because of the business that we do. We have
Sure.
different opportunities to travel, still need to travel,
Uh-huh.
and meet different people. And we're hearing people saying, we're excited about, a reset. We
Uh-huh.
believe that God is doing a reset, kind of
Okay.
stuff. One guy at a flower shop was telling me, this is our fault. We're so greedy. We're so focused on ourselves. And he's a
Hmm.
secular guy. Today
Wow.
I was on the phone with one of our providers for coffee for our offices, and he was saying, the girl on the phone was saying, oh, this is a joyful time, and we're going to have better times, and it's getting better very soon, and there's this hope. And you
Mm.
need to remember the history of the Jewish people. And when you
Sure.
think of the history of the Jewish people, it's this constant story of, we were almost killed, we're dying, we're dispersed,
Right.
God saved us, let's eat. So
Yeah.
as we're getting ready to celebrate the exodus from Egypt, and we're going to eat to
Yeah.
celebrate that. And I hope that very soon we'll be eating to celebrate the exodus from the coronavirus.
Amen. Amen. I think Israeli or not, I think everybody's excited for that meal whenever that happens, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Great.
One of the things that's happening in America is people are doing like remote congregations and trying to still stay connected with their churches and congregations and ministries. How is that happening in Israel?
Well, I see that exact same thing happening here as well. I think that it's awesome that we have technology at our fingertips. Everyone has a camera on their phone. It's not a big deal to log in and zoom in. Our congregation meets every Friday, just as scheduled. We'll have some time of worship and we'll pray together. We'll read scriptures together, even a short message. And I've heard of many other congregations that are doing that. Um, and the cool thing is that people are more available for social media, and many organizations and individuals are able to sort of harness that to further purposes, to further more speaking opportunities and interaction. I usually don't have much time to scroll through Facebook, and I'm finding myself being able to look at people's stories. I guess everyone knows what that is, but I'm just learning what stories on Instagram, on Facebook are. So
Sure.
but I'm seeing some great stuff happening, and I'm seeing people being able to connect with people that they usually don't connect with, and I'm seeing people that maybe miss congregation or miss a meeting because of a job that they have or something like that, and then because it's all digital and video is very accessible from any location, people can log in better. I think this is the challenge to all of us to get better about that, so that when things do get better, we still need to be able to allow that openness for people that are interested.
Sure.
And I think it's people are using the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, and that's cool. But there's still the lack of human connection and relationship. That's a big lack.
Right. Right.
So with the lockdown, is there still opportunity to serve and minister to the people that, normally you minister to?
Look, I think that we're not measured when things are comfortable and good. I can speak for myself, and I can share with you that we're in business, and one of our businesses takes property payments for rental and office services and different things like that at the beginning of every month.
Right.
And we're just at the beginning of the month, and we're dealing with that nonstop, and we really need to help out our clients. And I consult with different real estate developers and people that I know, and some of them are saying, look, these contracts were protected. People need to pay. You want to be nice to them, let them, be late on their payment, but don't let anybody go. And I think that as believers, this is the kind of time that we have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to be generous. Hey, I'm going to lose money because I want to do the right thing. Hey, I want you to know that I'm part of what you're doing. And that's one sense. On other areas, I think that a smile goes very far. Even just getting groceries or going to the gas station, which are still things that we can do. When you talk to the people there, you can crack a joke, you can smile, you can be a light when there seems to be no hope, because we really have a lot of hope, and we really have a lot to look forward to. And honestly, though things are tough, and though things can get even tougher than they are, we really know what we're leaning on, and we lean on the firm foundation of Yeshua, and we know that he's our provider and he's taking care of all of our needs. And that's really exciting to me, that we don't need to be worried about that. So ministry opportunities, I think that it's on a personal relationship level. I did a cool group in Tel Aviv of young people today they did a video on Facebook that they made, I don't know, maybe a few dozens or hundreds of meals, and they just drove around and handed them out to homeless people, because many organizations can't do that right now. And I thought that's really awesome, because they're believers handing out food and just reaching people in that place. And I think there's still opportunities. We just need to be more creative about the way that we do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good. Last question, Yoel. What do you see when this is over, whether that's, at the end of Passover or a few months from now? I guess we don't know. When everything goes back to normal, quote unquote, what do you see being the biggest change in Israel as a result of Corona and the lockdowns?
Well, you need to realize that this lockdown and coronavirus is coming in the middle of great turmoil that Israel's been in politically. We
Yeah.
haven't had a government in over a year.
Hmm.
We've been voting and voting and voting and voting and voting, and it seems like because of this virus, our leaders are willing to make different compromises that will give us a government. That
Hmm.
would be a great outcome.
Hmm.
Another thing to keep in mind is that though in the U.S. your financial family cycles are usually on a bi-weekly basis, you get your
Yeah.
paychecks every other week. In Israel, they're monthly based.
Okay.
Um, and then also most of the payments that people make, whether it's their credit cards or cars or houses, everything
Hmm.
happens in the first 10 days of the month.
Right.
So right now we're on the 2nd of April, and we're expecting that in the next week we're going to be seeing a lot of difficulty that people experience, and we're not going to
Hmm.
go back to normal, even if everything gets lit right back up and we can go back to normal. Many businesses are not going to be able to kick back to where
Hmm.
they were. I don't think people are going to have the kind of comfortable behavior that they had at the malls. Spending is going to drop. Economically, it's going to be a tough time.
Hmm.
Many people have lost their jobs and they're not going to get their jobs back. We're looking at nearly 25% unemployment, where we're used to seeing 3 to 4%.
Wow.
That these numbers are enormous.
Hmm.
I think we're going to see a rise in depression, a rise in mental difficulties that people are experiencing,
Yeah.
and I think that we're going to see kind of this slowdown in life.
Hmm.
And I think this is really the time where, for us as believers, we need to hold tight and make a very strong decision that we are going to be light, that we're going to hold our head up high because of the hope that we have.
Yeah.
And we're going to be light in the darkness, and we're going to be joyful, and we're going to be generous and kind as much as we can. And I think that at the same time, part of this process is a process that God is pruning many, many things, both
Hmm.
on a national level, international level, politically, um, but even at the way that we perceive things. And I think that that pruning process is a beautiful process for all of us. And I've heard
Hmm.
different people say, this is such a great opportunity to think of, being creative, and to
Yeah.
think of having an impact, and to think
Right.
of what am I working for? I'm tired of just doing something I don't believe in. And I
Sure.
think we're going to see some people making choices also to pursue things they believe in, take bigger risks or
Hmm.
smaller risks, or follow dreams. And but we're going to be, I really believe that there's going to be the pre-corona and post-corona era. I think this is a
Yeah.
very unique time in history that we're going to remember for many, many generations.
Right. That's awesome. Tremendous. I mean, tremendous difficulties, but tremendous ministry opportunities for those who are willing to seize them and see how the Lord wants us to get involved. That's awesome. Yoel,
Absolutely.
thanks for your time today. Stay safe, stay healthy indoors. Chag Pesach Sameach. Blessed Passover to you and your family. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Thanks so much for listening. Stay tuned as we answer some of your questions that you've sent us. We've actually been getting a lot of questions about how people can help with the coronavirus happening everywhere, specifically in Israel. How can people partner with Jewish Voice to help the ministries in Israel and the people in Israel?
Yeah, Carly, it's a great question. Right now, as you heard from our guests, things are really shut down in Israel. There's a lot of phone ministry and online evangelism and discipleship happening. Right now, the biggest thing you can do in the short run is to pray for strategies from heaven for reaching Jewish people and their neighbors, for the Israeli leaders, the Israeli Messianic Jewish believers in the land. Also, pray for boldness so that they can open their mouths and make known the reason that they have a hope in a time when people are confused and hopeless, and the reason that they have shalom when most people are panicking. So boldness in proclaiming the good news of Yeshua. And thirdly, protection. Emotions are running high right now. It's a tough time for everyone, no less so in Israel, maybe even more so because of the constant threats from outside the borders. Pray for protection for believers and for all Israelis in general. It's a small country. Pandemic can spread very quickly. So just pray for protection there, spiritual protection and protection over bodies, over health. Physical protection as well. But Carly, eventually, whether it's a couple weeks from now or whether it's a couple months from now, the streets will open again. and people will go back out. And then more than ever, people are going to need your support. You listening at home today, the Israeli Messianic ministries are going to be called upon by the government and by their neighbors to have more of an impact, to do deeper ministry, especially just physical helps programs and mercy ministry, than perhaps they've ever been engaged with before. You can stand with them by standing with this program. Get involved, become a monthly partner, give a one-time gift, sow regularly into what the Lord's doing. We will get those millions of dollars a year that we send in support to our 60 or 70 partner ministries in Israel over to them on time, so they can have the maximum impact possible even during dark times. Thank you for standing with us. Best way you can help right now, get on your knees and pray for what the Lord's doing in Israel. And in the short term, medium term, sow into what he's going to do. Tremendous things are ahead, tremendous ministry opportunities in Israel like we've never seen before. Well, what a treat to have interviewed our three guests today, Israelis grappling with the reality of the situation in Israel and how it affects the believing community, also how it affects ministry. You know, Israel needs our prayers more than ever. Of course, they always need our support, sowing our finances into what the Lord's doing in that nation and among the Jewish people and their neighbors. Now more than ever, though, your prayers are needed. Standing with Israel means standing with Israel all the time, not just when it's easy or when the economy's booming or when it's convenient for us, not just during the good times, all the time. And thank you, a faithful supporter of Jewish Voice Ministries International, for standing with Israel, standing with us as we stand with Israel to serve them in Jesus' name, in Yeshua's name. Remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Those who prosper, those who love you will prosper. Even when the world isn't prospering, the Lord can turn it around for good. So thank you for standing with Israel, with Jerusalem, with the Jewish people. This podcast special episode has been a production of Jewish Voice Ministries International. Thanks for listening.